Hello, and welcome to Don't Evolve Me, the place like Ash catches Pikachu, we don't evolve, we just level up. Hello, Miym.
Oh,
I did it this time.
yeah, that's it. Proud of you.
This is the only time I'm going to call you by that. It
That's
will be
perfect.
by your first name, because that is what I am used to.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah.
Anyway, Invincible, episode, or season 3, episode 6. What have you done, right?
What have I done?
No, that's
What
episode
have you
7. All I can say is I'm
says I'm
sorry.
sorry.
That is the episode.
Yep.
Which I guess is kind of the first question. Do we know why?
Yeah. Yeah, I think at the end of the episode it pretty much
Mm-hmm.
solidified that.
Powerplex is here. It is the episode that I think we talked about throughout the whole season
Yeah,
3, the preview.
this one and the next one. Waiting for him.
Oh yes, and well, yeah, that and the one after
After
that, which
that, yeah,
is
of course.
Conquest.
Of course.
So, Brandon, I think the first question is Powerplex.
Mm.
Did it live up to the amount of hype that we've been talking about?
Uh I think so, to some extent. Um it was definitely a more like a dynamic villain, like a different kind of like not
Mm,
just like a stereotypical villain, which is kind of what, from what I understand, is what we're getting into more of, is that kind of more interesting, like morally questionable kind of
yeah.
side.
the the tragic villain. This is the
Yeah.
villain that like makes Mark question everything.
Mm.
And I think we'll get more into it. And this is like kind of the moment that like I've been talking about this whole series, especially starting with like this season and a little bit of season 2 is what type of hero is Mark going to be?
Mm.
And this villain kind of makes that question of like what type of hero is Mark going to be? It's going to put everything in question, and it's going to be the person he thinks about moving forward.
Mm.
And that, yeah. So let's get into it. So I kind of wrote down I broke it into 5 different parts. Two main parts, maybe 80% of the episode, which is Powerplex, and everything that has to do with Mark, and then 3 little pieces of side characters, side stories that progressed.
Mm.
So let's get into Powerplex. Scott Duvall, voiced by Aaron Paul. Um, Breaking Bad, Jesse from Breaking Bad. I forget the character he plays on BoJack Horseman, but that's more or less who I kept thinking of during this episode
Mm.
because his voice is actually pretty well known from that show.
Yeah, I mean he's got a fairly unique voice,
Mm-hmm.
kind of a cadence to him.
Yeah, and I think it served his character very, very well.
Mm. Mm.
This Powerplex, this tragic, I would say, villain.
Yeah.
Maybe not like a villain to start, but very much went down the tragic path of a villain.
Hmm.
So, just to kind of recap what happened, we relive Omni Man and Invincible's fight from the end of season 1. The fight in Chicago. Mark gets pushed through a building. He tries to save the building. This girl falls. He tries to catch her and ends up she's dead. He just holds up her dead arm. This is turns out to be Scott Duvall's sister, as well as his niece who died in this fight. And we get to see that from his perspective. We see that Scott Duvall always had powers, but just a very small set of powers. Um, and you see it from his perspective, the amounts of destruction that happens. And the first thing I thought of, and I saw other articles who brought this up too, this is very Superman, or no, Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice esque.
Yeah.
This idea of like
The
this
the
everyman,
fallout. Yeah.
seeing it from that perspective, and then, you know, essentially hating somebody because of it.
Mm.
You see him go to an attorney trying to get Invincible, trying to get that justice, trying to get him served in courts.
Yeah.
And the attorney more or less is like, our laws do not apply here.
Mm.
Which I think puts Scott in like the right side of things initially.
Hmm. I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting justice or, trying to hold somebody accountable,
Mm-hmm.
for what they believe, if you've been wronged.
And it does it, and like his motivations make sense.
Mm, absolutely.
He works for the GDA. He steals equipment that it more or less charges up energy from the more hits and impacts it gets. He does a big practice speech in front of his wife, talking about why Mark needs justice. He needs to be faced in front of everybody else, and he needs to be the judge. And more or less, he gets his powers. His wife is essentially enabling him, always with his kid, and is trying to, more or less encourage him.
To follow through, yeah, with his
Yeah.
plans.
So he makes this big public event that Mark completely ignores. Just
Yep.
shuts the TV off, like
Yep.
whatever.
Doesn't even hear him say that he's asking about him.
I don't know if in the comic if he did. I think this actually is more or less what happened in the comics. He does get the interest of the Guardians, but he gets the interest of Shapesmith,
Yeah.
who more or less is kind of talking trash, but like isn't aware that he's talking trash. Show like changes into Invincible. Just
Yeah, probably the worst person that could have gone to that situation to try to de-escalate the situation.
tries to punch him up, and just immediately like, oh, I'm just gonna punch you, and then
Gets blasted.
eventually they fight. Powerplex escapes. Shapesmith gets essentially killed, and everybody thinks that he gets killed, and he's like, no, I didn't ask to fight you. You heard him in the Aaron Paul voice. And we get the really cool intro card of Invincible every
During
time he
this
says
part,
his
yeah.
name. And it's just, I need Invin.
Yeah.
It's because of. And with the finale of all the colors switching, which we'll get into because it took me like the second, I think it was the second time I watched this episode. I finally understood what the title card is referencing to, and we'll talk about it.
Okay.
It was talking about the episode that I've been referring to this entire season.
Okay.
Can't believe it took me this long to figure it out, but we'll talk about it. All right, he makes a second public appearance at a memoriam, which he correctly guesses that Invincible would be attending. But instead of Invincible, Eve interjects and more or less captures.
Puts him down pretty easily.
He escapes to then again make a third appearance, this time kidnapping his wife and child. Invincible at one point punches him. He uses all that power on Invincible and obliterates everything in sight, except it's not a killing blow to Mark, but it is a killing blow to his wife and child, and probably one of the more traumatic ways you could die.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's what happened with Powerplex. On the lighter side of things, we have Mark, Invincible side. Oliver gets some training fighting Elephant Man, voiced by the legendary John DiMaggio, out there trying to stop people from eating burgers and eat more vegetarian food. And you know what? He has a point.
Yep.
The whole elephants are, dogs aren't too far off from burgers. He has a point. I'm still eating my beef though.
Yep.
I'm just saying he has his point. Oliver is more or less using Elephant Man as practice dummy. He's aware of it. Mark's barking orders. Eve's giving him some positive coaching. And Oliver's just like, yep, you're my training dummy. He then talks about Dad and about how, from his perspective, Dad saved more lives than he killed. He should have a chance of redemption. And pretty much Mark and Eve are like, yeah, that's probably not going to happen. But opens up the door for Mark to be like, you know what, maybe Dad deserves a little bit of forgiveness here. Opens up the door. We get Debbie and Paul and talking about how Paul can't live up to Nolan. Debbie kind of encouraged him. Is like, you don't have to be their dad. You just more or less have to show up.
Mm.
I kind of like in that whole conversation, I'm just like, you just have to be her lover, man. Like,
Yep.
they're good.
Right.
They don't need a dad. Just we move to William's party. William is great at bowling. I even saved the picture of like what's everyone's score. William is dominating,
Yep.
but I'm also pretty sure Mark is holding himself back.
I mean, he's
Uh,
got to be. I just think about the scene in The Boys with Starlight when she's going
mm,
against Huey, and he's like, you're really bad at this. And she's like, well, and it shows him. It's like, yeah. I mean, Eve has got to have some, I mean, if she has powers, she's got to be able to
yeah,
strike them all down, too.
I'm pretty sure yeah.
Yeah.
Let William have it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Amber
Good
shows up
friends.
with her new boyfriend. William's just like, calm down, you're adults. Like,
Hmm.
she's happy, you're happy. Like, grow up. Mark and Amber have a pretty good, nice exchange. They're happy and they move on. Mark ignores the whole news of the super villain that's calling out for him. Eventually, they go to a memorial. Eve reminds Mark that he is a victim too. Paul's again doing all this talking with him and Debbie. Mark kind of Oliver's spying on them. Mark kind of does the let me
Hey,
help
yeah,
you out there.
yoinks him out of there. Yep.
I will say every time we watch that scene, my wife just laughs her ass off on it. Like I will say, just Stephen Yeun, well done in that
Yep.
moment, very humorous. Um, Powerplex shows up at the memorial. Eve more or less just like, hey, I got it, and does very well with him.
Mm.
And Debbie's just like, hey, give her more credit than that. Like, she's got this. And Eve knocked it out of the park.
She figured out how his powers work right away
Yep.
and, shut it down.
Mark and Eve talk about Scott. Mark gets information from Donald. Mark then meets Scott, and all that happens.
Mm. I do like that Mark and Donald still have a little bit of a relationship.
Uh huh. I mean, it makes
It
sense.
shows, yeah.
William,
Donald.
Rick,
Mhm.
like he's the liaison.
Mm. It's good to know he still has like at least a way to speak to them, kind of thing, if he needs to.
All right, and the three other storylines we have: Rudy fixes Monster Girl's power.
Oh,
She
yes.
no longer de-ages when she uses her power thanks to a belt. Ray confronts Rex. She's quitting the team. Wants
Mm.
Rex to quit with her. Rex declines, state that that's all he has is superheroing. Ray and Rex then share a kiss. My wife thinks they had sex. I'm like, well, they didn't show it.
They didn't awkwardly cut away from it, saying
They
that they're
did.
doing it.
Exactly. They shared a moment. It may
Mhm.
have led to more. It doesn't matter. And then we get Angstrom at the end with
Yes.
so many Invincibles. And yes, Brandon, it is here. That is the moment that I've been waiting for.
Yes.
It is called Invincible War.
It's gonna
What was that?
pop off.
A lot of things
Yes.
are going to pop off.
Mm.
So many things. All right. This is where I do my fun little segment called I Got Some Questions.
Let's
And
have 'em.
I have a decent amount of questions. Hold on, I gotta count them. What we got here? Wow, 20. 20 questions.
Wow. Playing 20 questions.
We are. Except there's no fun guessing at the end. All right, number one. John DiMaggio needs a bigger role, right?
I mean,
That's-
everything he's in. I mean, he's just a legendary voice actor, right?
He is. He gets like 2 lines, and I'm like, I want more. I want more Elephant Man. Give John DiMaggio like a bigger role, please. Make him the big villain at the end. I would be so happy.
Yeah.
No, I really would. And his
Have
voice
Bender
just
come
switched
in
up.
and
Jake the dog, Bender.
yeah, just have him come in and
Is
clean
he
house.
is he bigger as Bender or bigger as Jake the dog?
I think of Bender, but maybe that's because I'm old.
Maybe. But also, Adventure Time's also old.
That's
It's not
true.
as old as Futurama.
Yeah.
Question number 2. Is this the best episode yet?
Like overall, like or just the season.
Season 3 and overall.
I mean, that was a pretty good episode.
Mm-hmm.
The only one, I mean, the first episode of the season was pretty hyped too.
Yep.
Um,
I think it beats it.
yeah, I mean, it hits harder, I guess.
I I think it's on the level of like when you think of the best Invincible episodes, I
Mm,
think this is the episode where you consider like, ooh, the
yeah,
Powerplex episode.
you're never gonna forget it. That's for sure.
And I think it's that episode where it's like it's maybe not as high as the finale of season 1,
Mm,
but it's pretty fucking close.
yep.
I will say in the comics, this is like I always remember Powerplex. I always forget how it goes down, but I
Mm,
remember Powerplex. I'm like, ooh, this really fucks up Mark emotionally. And I mean, you see why.
yep.
Okay, wow. Question number 3. How are we feeling with the animation going from like awful some scenes to flat out fucking amazing?
I mean, honestly, I wish it was more consistent overall because it does have really good moments, but then there's also a lot of moments where it's like, you know,
It's just like a bunch of flat, no moving shots cut back
mm,
to forth. There's a lot of moments where it's just like, ooh, this isn't looking that great.
yeah,
Not like in moments that you need it to look great, but there's a lot of like there's just moments where you can tell that the animation's just not the not the greatest. But then you see this episode with like Powerplex and like the background with the music and the, like you can see like the details and the lighting and I'm just like, holy fucking shit! This like I'm
mhm,
glad that this show can get really really good and oftentimes great, especially in this episode. But it's just like, ooh, I do remember the bad moments.
yep.
Is there a way that we can just like lift the floor of the show entirely?
You,
Like, can we just have like good and then some great moments, like very much like One Piece?
yep.
There's moments in like even the new anime that I'm catching up on 1108 just because
Okay.
they finally released some dub episodes. But there's like
Okay.
moments even like in the new anime where it's like it's not the greatest. Like you
Mm,
could tell like the animation's a little bit short in some shots, but mostly, especially when it gets really, really good, it's fucking really, really good.
yeah. I mean, when you compare Invincible to like some of the top tier anime nowadays, it is a little stark in comparison as far as just
Yeah.
like the overall quality. Like Invincible can get there sometimes,
Hmm.
but like there's a lot of like anime and stuff that's just like always going there.
I think
Like
this is
every fight, every scene, is always crazy. I think of like Jujutsu Kaisen.
the episode that makes me. It's like yes, the show can get there. All right,
Mm,
awesome. They're proving they can get there. It's just okay. You got there. Can you be there
maybe,
consistently?
yeah, maybe they blew their whole budget on the last 3 episodes of the season.
Yeah, yeah, that could be very likely.
So,
That's all. I'll just leave it at that. Scott's somewhat right here, isn't he?
I mean, he's right until he takes it too far.
Just like a lot of the
Yeah,
tragic villains,
yeah,
Legend of Korra, I think of, and that it's he's right, and then it's like okay, but you're making a lot of destruction, so you got to get this justice. You're killing you. I mean, you more or less took the highest sacrifice so you can get your justice.
hmm,
Which leads me to question number 5. Did Becky deserve her death?
uh,
Scott's wife.
I mean, deserve is a tough word, but I
Mm-hmm.
mean, she was just as much guilty, I feel like, as he was. I mean, for pushing and enabling, allowing herself and her baby to be tied up, knowing that he's planning on potentially fighting Invincible, this guy who they think,
Hmm.
you know, potentially causes all this collateral damage on his own, and then to put themselves in that situation, it's kind of like, you know,
Yeah, I like I knew it was going to happen when it did, like when it happened, but it's just like reliving the scene through animation. It's just very like God, you. This is just a dumb idea. Just kidnap somebody else.
yeah. Yeah, or do you
Like,
even need to kidnap somebody? I mean, you've been able to get his people's attention thus far. Eventually, he will come, Or I don't know. I feel like there could have been better ways. Obviously, it is
there's
tough
just
because he did try. The first time, especially, when Shape Smith or whatever comes out, he's not trying to hurt anybody. He's literally just trying to get some attention so he can confront him, and then it kind of goes down from there.
I think I'm pretty sure it was Becky's idea to like, and I think in the comics they go into more in detail with this, but
Mm,
it was her idea, and it's like, oof, like I get the logic, kind of like he's a hero, he's gonna help people, he's gonna see a victim, and he's gonna want to help, but like that's not why he showed up.
mm,
He was gonna show up the next time he made his case. Like
mm,
Mark was prepared for that moment, and I'm like, you just put you put yourself and your baby in danger to do something that you're moving past justice here.
yep.
You're moving towards revenge. And
Mm,
I'm like, it's hard to say that she deserved death, to at least to that painful degree, but it's like you played your part into your demise.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
you can argue
Walk that path.
you played the biggest part here, arguably. Maybe like her husband played the bigger part, but like you led him there.
Hmm.
You led him to that degree and you put yourself and your child in danger.
Yeah, that's pretty unforgivable.
Number 6. Other than punching Scott that one time,
Mm.
did Mark do anything wrong here?
I think he could have tried to get them out there a little faster. You know, whether or not that was his fault. I mean, he can move real fast.
Oh
You know,
yeah, like get the two out of there, out of
yeah,
the way.
I can't imagine that he could have just like grabbed them and ripped the ropes off and flew out of there in like a half a second before he could have gotten back.
That's fair. That's fair. But I mean, young adults,
Yeah.
young hero. He's not gonna think, "Hey, let's save." Which is funny to think. Like Oliver, he
Hmm.
gave the advice, like, "Hey, watch out for the people. Get the people out of there."
Yep.
And he didn't do that himself.
Yep. And
And
that's a lesson learned.
it should be. And I think, okay, good on you for putting like a finding that criticism,
Hmm.
because I was trying to think, like, I don't think Mark did anything wrong, like in this moment. Like even in the battle, he was right. He was a victim.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Like he was fighting his dad who was attacking.
Yep.
He was used as a weapon in that moment. And he did his best. He wasn't a great hero, but he did his fucking best. He tried to
Hmm.
save Scott's sister.
Yep.
Failed, but he tried. And so, other than like punching him, like I can't think of like what he did wrong here, but I guess he could have saved the two. That being said, he wasn't planning on punching Jack or not
Yeah.
Jack, Scott.
Yep. Yeah, he did let his, anger get a little bit ahead of him there too, which, you know, he knew how his powers worked.
All right, Powerplex gets one guardian as the Shapesmith. Should he be insulted? Like I think I asked this already.
Yeah. I mean, in theory, Shapesmith should be pretty powerful, right? Like,
Hmm.
if he knows what he's doing kind of thing. Um, but yeah, I mean, he's definitely, I guess, read the room kind of thing. This is a guy that's having like, mental, you know, problems kind of thing, or needs help. He doesn't need to be beat up by some alien kind of thing. So having somebody go out there that maybe could have tried to talk him down instead of
Well,
just beat him up.
I'm thinking like Cecil's behind this, right? And I have another question. I mean, my next question after this is my next two questions are about this. One, where's the GDA in all of this? Obviously, Guardians is there, but we don't see
Mm,
Cecil at all. But I'm like, Cecil had to be aware of all of this, right? And he's probably aware of Donald. Like,
yeah,
we can assume that Cecil knows. Like, he's
yeah.
not unaware of what is happening with Powerplex, but he's very much missing.
My assumption is that it's probably just too small for him to worry about. It's
Yeah.
pretty low tier.
Which is why he sent the Shapesmith. It
Yep.
was fucking hilarious, by the way.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I just think of like, all right, this is Jesse from Breaking Bad talking to Sonic. Like,
Yeah.
that's just, I'm like, this is crazy in my head right now. I'm trying, like, just listening to this. Um, but yeah, I just, after that, it was Darkwing and Immortal and Shapesmith, which I'm like, hey, you got a little bump up. Like, you didn't get the
Mm.
full team, but that's a pretty good three, like a trio. That's a
I
good
mean, that's
trio.
almost the full team, isn't it? Aren't the what are they missing Kate?
Kate's Black Samson.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
he's still
yeah.
there. Yeah. So I mean,
You,
that's the
you got,
majority.
so I mean, like, you got stepped up.
Mm.
Number 10 is Eve too perfect? Because
Uh,
she's just killing it in like every scene she's in. She's got the perfect advice. She knows exactly how to like hit an opponent. She knows exactly what to say to Mark. Like
mm.
it's like to the point where I'm like, oh wow, Eve's killing it. She's fucking awesome.
Yeah, I can't deny that.
She's a little too awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting. I should go on the internet
Waiting
and
for the
I'm
shoe
pretty
to drop.
well, I'm just waiting for the Mary Sue arguments to go against her.
Yeah.
Super powerful. She's a woman. I don't know. Like this is a superhero show. Angry men. I'm just like,
Yeah.
I'm waiting for that criticism. But I think it's a good question of like, what is her flaws? Because she's shown a lot of strengths.
Yeah. Well, we've seen her struggle a little bit throughout the show with her, trying to figure out what kind of hero she wants to be too.
That's fair. That's fair.
She's made mistakes.
Yeah, with like building, going to college to fix
Yep.
all of it.
And even like in that fight she had where she was fighting that one dude with the big cannon arm or whatever, and she just like wanted to beat him up and almost let the people fall off the bridge and stuff.
Yeah, and her special episode.
Yeah, I never watched that.
No? Oh, was
No.
it in a different episode?
Yeah, that
You
was just a
should. It's
regular
good.
episode. Yeah.
It's a pretty good episode. It's a pretty good episode of like TV, and it was really like the right time to watch it, just because it's in the middle of season 1, season 2.
Yeah.
I think it was like right before season 2 came out. It was like,
I think
hey,
so too, yeah.
it's not out yet, but like enjoy the special episode.
Mm.
Number 11 is not Mike, Mark. It's late at night. I just got puked on.
Okay.
Mark,
okay.
right or wrong, not to present to Powerplex the second time or even the first time?
That's tough because just like we established, like Mark is, just as much. Well, maybe not just as much, but a victim in different ways in the same situation. So it's hard to like try to pit them against each other.
I will say, from a behavior standpoint, and the job in the field that I work on, if there's someone who is just like not in a good headspace and they're pissed off at you, one of the worst things that you can do if you're trying to de-escalate somebody in that situation is present the person they're really
To
fucking
confront
pissed.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, and
That makes sense.
so what? Just watching the scene, I'm just like, okay, yep, Eve, yep, you're in the right here. Go
Yeah.
out and try to de-escalate them, and more or less,
And
that's
she
what
did. Yeah,
She
but
did.
then the GDA dropped the ball, underestimated him again.
Again for this. Like, hey, this dude gets powers by hitting himself. Maybe don't put him in a
Let him-
position where he can move, and only give him in one truck in the middle of the city with only like 3 or 4 guards.
Right.
Or 2. I think there was like 2 in the truck with him. It was bad. It was just dumb.
Yep.
It almost like feels like Cecil did this on purpose.
Yeah.
It's questionable. So the next question is, this isn't even a question. Powerplex has some great powers, huh? Just
yeah.
I just want to take a moment to just be
No,
like,
yeah, it's cool.
it was
I mean,
a cool.
I'm a
it's a
sucker
cool-
for electricity, and I like the concept of taking in like force and stuff like that. It makes it an interesting fight because you can't just beat them up.
I just love it because it's like, all right, Invincible is super strong. Let's have a power that takes that away from him. You can't beat me by punching me because I'll just put it back to you. And it's a cool way to be like, how do I defeat the guy that I can't punch when my strength is to punch?
Right. It makes you think outside the box. I like that kind of stuff. That's exactly what like the good parts of Superman is the type of the villains and the scenarios where he can't just punch his way out of it, Because like he's so
Brainiac,
great
Lex
at it. Yeah,
Luthor.
exactly. It's the villains that you can't just
Parasite.
punch. Those are the most interesting ones.
Bizarro, Mr. Mystiplix. Yeah, it's when you're like the strongest person in the room, the smartest person in the room, how do you gain an advantage elsewhere? Flash, if you're if you're the fastest, how do you counteract that? It's really good writing on Robert Kirkman. My next question again is kind of another one. Aaron Paul's amazing, right? We already had that moment. Scott fails because he can't let it go. I think that was a question, but more or less we have the answer. Are we happy that Amber and Mark are perfectly fine with the breakup? Because
Yeah,
we don't see that often. It's kind of
yeah,
fresh.
yeah. I'm happy with it because I don't really need the melodrama.
I agree. Let it be
I get
done.
enough of that. Yeah, every show I always has, the breakup and the awkwardness and the will they won't they and all that crap. Like let's
They
just not do that.
they did avoid one potential storyline that I think from the comics, which was like the last storyline from Amber. In the comics, she dated somebody else, not Kyle. She dated a guy named Gary. And Gary
Okay.
was very abusive to the point where it sent Mark towards rage towards Gary and threatened him. We didn't get Gary, we get Kyle, who more or less seems to be respectable.
Yeah.
And I know I read like an article that just kind of questioned like, is this our show's version of dropping that storyline and their way of saying like, hey, she's happy, he's happy, we're moving on. I mean, you don't get that in comics, so you don't get that in shows often, and
Yeah.
we get the
Not often.
melodrama.
Right.
So I just wanted to highlight it.
No, I agree. I appreciate the the way that the relationships have been handled so far for the most part.
Mark, a victim of Omni-Man, that was a question, but I think we already know. What's with Paul? Paul's done, right? Like, I think we could say that Paul's, his exit's being written with the whole,
I mean, he didn't like being flown in a car very much. That was a great scene too.
I mean, how would you
The whole
feel
idea they're
about
like,
that?
we got to go to Chicago in 30 minutes. They're like, oh, we're not teleporting, are we? No, we're taking the car. Just carrying them overhead.
Just the sigh of relief, like, oh, good. Wait,
Yeah.
I was like
Power.
questioning because I'm like, are they taking the car? Is it only the 30 minutes? Like, do they they live in the Chicago suburb? Like
Right,
it,
right.
because like that's a question that's never answered in the comics.
Like where
And
exactly
so
they are.
yeah, and then so I'm just like, do they live in Chicago? And then I saw the car. I'm like, oh no, they don't. Will they ever reveal where they live? No.
No.
I always just imagine East Coast somewhere, like
Yeah.
Philadelphia, Pennsylvania
I do
area.
get that. I do get that vibe. It does have that East Coast vibe.
Um, Oliver is Oliver right about Omni Man? Is he right about his dad?
Yeah, that's tough. See, because it's different. I feel like because human lives are so much, you know, to put it his way, fragile and short and stuff like that than their lives. So it's like a difference. I don't know of like time. With time heals all wounds. Enough time goes by, people will forget and they'll forgive. And they'll move on, kind of thing. I kind of forgot where I was going with that, but
Late at night with
yeah,
Miym and Jake, where we forget what we're talking about.
that's right.
ADHD episode. Brum, brum, brum.
It's been a while.
Oh yeah, it's. I forgot the point too. Let's move on.
Next question.
Rex, Ray,
Yes.
Ray's. Actually, I'm gonna read the question how I have it written. Is Rex doomed with the wrong choice, or is Ray doomed for the right one? Because I think the story is writing up to there's going to be some type of consequence to this.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. See, there's still a little confusion, right? Because we saw like a potential future version of Robot, but it wasn't Robot, it was Rex. But it really feels like they're planning on killing off Rex. So that's kind of the vibe I'm getting. So especially with all the talk that next time you're probably not going to make it out, kind of thing, or you might not make it out, and it's a lot of foreshadowing.
It's a lot of foreshadowing happening here. I'll be honest, this is a question that I generally ask myself because it seems like someone is doomed just the way they're writing it. Of course, I know what happens next, or I think I know what happens next. Last question. So many Invincibles. Are you ready for it, Brandon?
No, I don't know how he could possibly stand a chance against so many of himself.
Yeah. it's gonna be a time. Let's get into ratings.
All right.
So this is one of the better episodes.
Yep.
It progresses the story forward in a lot of ways, but it's also its own episode that
Mm.
deals with the philosophy of Mark and his guilt and killing, what is right, what is wrong, from Scott's perspective. And we will talk about the ending too, how Scott didn't really forgive Mark. He blamed him. His sister
I need
died,
more.
his nephew died, his wife died, and his kid died. And he blamed Mark.
Mm.
And it's something that's going to weigh heavy on his mind because Mark's going to ask himself, am I the bad guy here? And I think really it's no. Is there things Mark can do better?
Mm.
Yes. But also Powerplex is Scott is not like he's not mentally well,
Yep.
as Adam Eve put
He's
it.
a broken man.
This episode though, I really enjoyed it. It
Mm.
in the comic it was memorable to the point where like you knew that Powerplex fucks up Mark and kind of like puts him on a path like the darker hero path. It brings out the overall question like just a little bit further. But I think this animated show, this episode itself, really just highlighted it even more. Like I think this episode is a lot better than what they did in the comics. Because holy shit, like it was a really good episode. And so for me, I'm like, it's either a 5- or a 5, and I really don't know how to put it lower than that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in the scale of things, I mean, a 5. Have you ever given anything a 5?
Yeah.
Yeah. What have you given a
Um,
5?
Into the Spider Verse, a couple episodes here or there that are just really hit.
Mm.
Um, Invincible, I think season finale of season 1,
I give a 5.
I would give it a 5. Dark Knight, but I think Dark Knight I gave a 5- just because I'm like, there's a little overrated part. Um, I don't give up 5s often,
Yeah.
and I don't. The scale seems too small for a 5, but I also like I don't have any critique to
Yeah.
the episode itself. I thought it was a really good, really well written story. I really like the philosophy of Mark and Scott. Like Mark didn't do anything wrong, but like in the way, there's a lot to feel guilty for.
Yep.
And it's a really just well written comic book arc, really well written television episode, and I really like how the animation just shot up in quality. And I like the little bit of parts of like Rudy and like this is very relationshipy.
Yeah.
A lot of
Resolution.
relationships.
I mean, like actually,
Hmm.
finding a cure, so to speak, for Monster Girl and, and Rex and Ray kind of coming to a point, I guess, where they split their separate ways. So there's kind of some resolution to some things too, in a way, this episode.
So I'm gonna say 5- because I feel like it's in the grand scheme of things. I don't know if this is going to be the best episode of this season, even just because the next
Mm.
two might jump that in quality, at least for stakes. But yeah, at least a 5-. It
Mm.
might be a 5. I don't. I don't know. What do you think? Where are you at?
I think a 5 of minus is safe. I mean, it's
Yeah.
safe. It could go up a little bit, but I think a 5 minus is probably pretty safe.
Yeah, and who knows? I think after the season, let's table that talk of episode 6, the Powerplex episode. Is that still a 5 for us, or
Right.
is that like a 5-, 4+ area? But it's top 3 for sure of best episodes.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
MVC.
There we go.
All right, so let's go through the last couple episodes. We have episode 1 through 3. We voted Mark,
Yep.
unless we changed it to Cecil. But I think we did Mark, and MVP was Cecil.
Mm.
Episode 4, we had Alan.
Yes. Yep.
For most valuable villain, we had Immortal. And for the last episode, prior to this one, Adam Eve. and then we had Titan.
Yep. Okay.
So this is who I have my top 10 most valuable lists. Before we even record, I was like, I have a lot. And you're like, Brandon was just like, I think you have 10. And I was like, I exactly have 10. Giving me crap. It's like, you only have to give you only need one, maybe two, maybe three, not 10. But I did 10.
Let's hear them.
So we're not going to get into, I'll just give you 10 through 4 because I don't think the rest are really worth talking about.
Okay.
We have Rex at 10, Donald at 9, Oliver at 8, Shape Smith at 7, Debbie at 6, Ray at 5, Rudy at 4.
Okay. So all the characters of the show.
Yeah, that's how I put them in my brain.
Where's Paul fall under that?
Paul, honorable mention or dishonorable
Number 11.
mention. Hold
Hey,
on,
he's
let me
trash.
put it on 11. Okay. Number 3 might be surprising, but I put Powerplex here.
Okay.
In terms of like character wise, I think like maybe you can say he's the most valuable for this episode in terms of just writing. I think you could argue him number 1, but I like to have most valuable character and most valuable villain in 2 separate categories. So for me, Powerplex is easy. Is the most valuable villain for that.
Oh, absolutely.
Elephant Man for a close second. Actually, no. Let's be honest. Scott's wife might be number 1 here because villain in disguise.
Right.
I mean, she was kind of the brains of the operation.
She's 1.51.
More or less. I'm debating between. No, I think Adam Eve's my number 1. Right above Mark.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think that's fair this week again.
She's a little bit too awesome.
Yep.
But like she just handles every situation like appropriately. She's the adult in the room, like we said last week. Knows how to handle Oliver. Knows how to handle this situation. Genuinely has Mark's best interest. Yeah, she's very valuable character.
I agree.
So
And then Mark's number 2.
Mark's number 2, and then like
Yep.
I think there's an argument for Powerplex just because in entertainment wise, like he would be number 1 here. But yeah, that's why we had 2 different categories. I'll put that in for later. All right, this is the part of the show where we do episode titles.
Yes.
We talk too much about episode titles and what they mean, and I already know what they mean because number 1, our next episode is What Have I Done? I think we know what this is going to talk about, right?
Yeah.
What have I done? As in, what have all my Invincibles done?
Mm-hmm.
You're not ready, Brandon.
Oh, I think I have an idea now. What might happen?
Yeah, a lot happens. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
And then episode 8 is, when like a lot of bad things happen. You know how they say bad things happen in 3.
Yep.
This is the 3 things that are going to happen, Brandon. Powerplex, a bunch of Invincibles, and then Conquest.
Conquest. Yep. Bad things come in 3s.
And by God, it's going to be a fun watch. So
I'm excited.
we got a double header the next 3 weeks. We have Invincible and Daredevil next Friday, or hopefully, or next weekend. We'll talk about it. But Invincible War is happening. Bring your Kleenex box. Bring your popcorn. It's gonna be a fun ride, or it's not gonna be a fun ride. I don't know. It's gonna be entertaining.
I'm here for it.
All right.
As always.
Well, this is your host, and this is me signing off. Thank you, Miym.
Thank you.